Hi, good morning. Thank you for joining us. We'll get started in a couple of minutes, but in the meantime, please introduce yourself in the chat. Hi, Deidre. Hi, Justin. Or Samantha. All right, it's 11:02, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you all so much for joining us today. Continue to introduce yourself in the chat, and we'll be monitoring it throughout today's webinar. This will be recorded and available on our website after the fact. I'm Samantha Graham. I'm with the Institute for Emerging Issues. Also on the call today, we have Jess Epston, who we will hear from later, Kylie Foley, and Kirsten Chang is helping us run this, and we have our community initiatives intern Eva McDonald also on. You'll be hearing from our speakers later, but our main focus today is on, of course, data. The state and our program, Band and C, has been focused on digital inclusion planning and supporting counties and regions with implementation over the past couple of years. All of this requires a lot of community data. Every resource and link will be in the chat, and it will be included in a follow-up email. And of course, the recording will be available on our site after today's presentation. So what today will look like, we'll do a little brief overview of IEI and Band and C. We'll hear more about North Carolina's digital equity data, some covered population data, and then some national data. So Band and C was started after the forum in 2020. Maggie Woods on the call here. She planned that whole endeavor. So IEI has a forum every February, and this past February was focused on financial resilience. We have a call to be part of our cohort program. Those applications are due March 29th at 5 p.m. We are looking for community-based organizations from across North Carolina that work to increase household financial resilience, especially for communities with historically increased barriers for saving and debt management. We can fund up to 5 organizations, so please share with anyone who may be interested, and those decisions will be made in late April. I will now turn it over to Jess Epston to talk more about data. Thanks, Jess.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jess Epston. I am a digital inclusion specialist here with IEI and Band and C. And it's great to see so many familiar names on the call. So before we get to the main content, I just wanted to give some quick definitions so we can all be on the same page when we're talking about and using some of these terms. So this is a great framework from the National Digital Inclusion Alliance. I just like this. It's very simple. So digital divide is the issue. It's also important to note that the digital divide looks very different across communities, geographies, demographics, and also the digital divide is always moving and changing, right, as technology changes and develops. So just acknowledging that that's not a stagnant thing. Digital equity is our goal, and digital inclusion is the work. So that's the work that we're all doing, planning on the ground services, grant writing, data collection. Next slide, please. So digital inclusion is the work, and it's the work we're doing, like I said, to achieve these things: access to affordable, high-speed internet, devices that meet the needs of the user, digital skills to use the internet and that device, quality technical support, and apps and online content designed for self-sufficiency. So again, that's a helpful definition from NDIA. So our goal at Band and C, as Samantha said, is to support you all, to support government and community leaders as you write your digital inclusion plans and implement the strategies from those plans. So here is our current map of digital inclusion planning across the state, and we're updating this as folks complete their plan and start their planning process. So we're updating this pretty regularly. And right now we are very close to filling this all into yellow, and we're working with our latest group of grantees, which with funding from the State Office of Digital Equity and Literacy. So we're just thrilled that this map is soon going to be all filled up. And to achieve our goals with Band and C, we put on webinars like this, and we also organize monthly peer sharing gatherings for our COG partners and others involved in digital literacy, digital inclusion planning across the state. And now I get to turn it over to our speakers. So as we get to the topic, I just want to say we wanted to have this webinar because there's just so much more data available to us in the digital equity field now than just a year ago. And we're going to review state and national data sources today and how to access those various databases. And data is such a useful tool as we work to align with our community needs and apply for all the funding that's coming down right now. So we're so thrilled to have Maggie Woods and Erin Huggins with us today. They are vital in the collection and dissemination of state digital equity data. So we're so grateful that they're here today. And our program and many other programs are made stronger by their support. And there's really no better people to help us explore what data we can use to get to know our communities better as we try to ensure North Carolinians are connected regardless of zip code, digital skills, income, or other historic barriers and discrimination. So first, introducing Erin Huggins. She is the Associate Director of Program Evaluation and Educational Resource at the Friday Institute for Educational Innovation at NC State University. And her recent related evaluation and research projects include the North Carolina State Digital Equity Plan Development, the ARC Digital and Health Literacy Grant, Duke Endowment Literature Review of Digital Literacy, the A&T Digital Navigator Program, Digital Learning Rubric for Educator Prep Programs and At-Home Learning Initiatives. Her commitment to equitable access to education and educational opportunities, as well as digital equity and inclusion, run throughout all of her work. And Maggie Woods is the Deputy Director of the NCDIT's Office of Digital Equity and Literacy. And as we mentioned, Maggie was previously with IEI as the Program Manager and founded our Band and C program. And many of you on the call probably worked with her during the pandemic to come up with some initial digital equity plans. So among many projects she manages for the Office of Digital Equity and Literacy, she worked with Erin and many partners to turn in North Carolina State Digital Equity Plan to NTIA. And I'm sure many of you have also spoken with her through that process and in turning in your Digital Champion grants as well. So we're so grateful that they've joined us today in one of their many presentations and meetings this week, and we will have time for questions. So if you have questions, please put them in the chat. We'll get to them throughout and also at the end. So Maggie is going to be kicking us off talking about accessing overall broadband data. Thank you.
Thanks, Jess, so much. That was like the kindest introduction I've ever received. And it's really great to be here this morning. It really does feel like I'm coming full circle. And it's great to see that map become full yellow and soon full green of every county being represented with a digital inclusion or digital equity plan. So I know a lot of you have put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into that. And I see a lot of familiar names and then some new names as well. So really excited to be here today. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start off by sharing some data sets and resources to kind of get you started on the lay of the land in broadband and digital equity in North Carolina. And I'm trying not to make this death by data set. Let me know if I am, or if something's confusing, please type in the chat. I'll try to monitor as much as possible, but I know the II crew will also be, monitoring it. And if I can answer a question in real time, I will. If not, I know that there's plenty of time for questions at the end. So let me share my screen. Okay. So the first thing that is going to be really helpful to you if you're just getting started is to go to NC1 Map. NC1 Map has data for all state agencies, but it has a very specific broadband page. And this specific broadband page can be a little overwhelming, which is why we're talking about it right now, but it has some really, really useful data. And what I want to start with is these county profiles. And what we're going to look at when we look at the county profiles is it's going to give you just a quick snapshot of your county, specifically as it relates to broadband infrastructure data. So it's going to show you the percentage of unserved and underserved households. It's going to show you the investments that are being made in the county, both by the state and the federal government, to build out the infrastructure. And it's just a really good place to start. So the way you do this is you go here and you can select a county. I'm going to select Bertie County for our purposes. And hang on, I'm going to stop sharing for a moment. And I'm going to reshare a slide right now so you can easily see this. Hang on one moment. I'm used to using PowerPoints on this. We all need digital skills, digital literacy training. This is me in real time trying to do something a little different with you. Okay, so this is the Bertie County profile that I just downloaded. And you can see here, so you have the map of the county. It's all color coded. We're gonna walk through those color codes over here on the left. So the left has all of this information. It's kind of a legend so you can understand the map. And so over here, you see these different dots in different colors, showing you different programs that have been invested in the county. So the GREAT Grant, the CAB Awards, those all come from our office and the Division of Broadband and Digital Equity. And kind of the different colors show you kind of which pot of funding it came from. It really means more to us than it probably means to you, but it can be helpful if you have questions from our office that you see that a GREAT Grant award that was ARPA funded, that's contingent, is in this area. That can be helpful to our office, but really it just kind of shows you where there's investment. You can also see we're showing where there's investment in other programs. So right over here, there's like some stripies, some black stripies. Those show the FCC Rural Digital Opportunity Fund grant that's called RDOF. So if you've heard RDOF. And then down here, it has just like quick estimates for what we think we know that's happening in Bertie County. And I say what we think we know is that, well, we have really good data. And I'm going to put this out there. I think we have the best data in the country on who has internet and who doesn't for a number of reasons, which I'll share with you soon. We don't know everything, right? And you who live in a place may have better data because you live there, you have the lived experience. You know that when you walk to the house next to yours, your neighbor's house, they don't have internet, even though the state says they do. So that's really important for us to know. But if you see here what the Bertie County estimates are, it's estimating about 16% of people are completely unserved. And what that means is either they don't have internet or their internet is too slow that we don't consider it internet. So they're completely unserved. This is really interesting to me. 0% is underserved. So this means that they have internet, but we don't consider it fast enough internet to be considered high-speed internet. And then you can kind of go down here. It talks about the percent with fiber, the percent with DSL, et cetera. So you can kind of get more granular. But what I want to know and what I think is really interesting is if you go up here, we've kind of used this hex bin approach to show like where we should be prioritizing funding for infrastructure build out. And you see this kind of dark pink. That means there's a high count of unserved or underserved houses, businesses, locations that don't have internet. And then this kind of medium blue means that there's a high percentage of unserved or underserved houses. So if you go up to the top here, that, I don't know exactly what color that is that a dark kind of purple blue color? That's where there's both a high percent and a high count of unserved and underserved houses and businesses. So if you look now at the map of Bertie County, there are a lot of that dark purple blue color, right? And so as you work with our office, if that's your role, or as county officials work with our office and our division, these are kind of the areas that you might be thinking about. These are where we would prioritize to do build out. So I'm going to stop sharing for a moment. We have profiles that are updated all the time for each county. So please use that as a key resource as you do your work. And it can be confusing. It takes a little bit of time to kind of get your mind around what does this legend look like. We do have an amazing technical assistance team that is here to help you as well. We have partnerships with all 100 counties, working with local government. And so we are here to help walk you through that data to make sure that it aligns with what you know is real in your county as well. So I'm sharing my screen again. I'm back on that one map page. I've just scrolled down a little bit, and I want to show you one more resource here. Again, there's a lot of resources. We're not doing death by data set today. So let me show you this quick resource. Did that pop up for all of you? Are you seeing a map on your screen? Okay, I'm seeing nods. Okay, so this is our broadband survey that we've had for many, many years. And basically what it allows you to do is you can take the survey in English or in Spanish, and you can take it on your computer or your phone, and you do a speed test. And it geolocates where you are and tells us what speed your internet is. You can also say you don't have internet. And so what this has allowed us to do is really pinpoint where there is internet and where there is not internet. And so let me see here. I'm going to select a county. I'm just going to do Alamance County right here. So if you zoom into wherever your county is, you can kind of see where people have taken the survey and what it says. So you don't have all the information here, but we know that this is a home. They took the survey in English. And it tells you just a little bit more. It can tell you what service provider, and then it'll tell us whether they have internet or not. This one, because it doesn't say they don't have internet, means that they did have internet. But it tells us a little bit more. It shows us that it has over 25.3 speed. Why this is important is, and Jess is going to talk a little bit more about this soon, but the FCC has created better data for us to use on where there is and isn't internet, but it's not perfect data. And as a state, we're allowed to challenge that data. And so we've been able to do pretty significant challenges to the data, because the FCC may say that this internet service provider is providing internet in this location, and we can go and pull up the exact point and say, no, they are not. This shows that someone does not have internet, or this business does not have internet, or this farm does not have internet. So this has been extremely helpful and remains a way that we can really work with residents across the state to highlight where there is and isn't internet. Okay, so I'm gonna leave NC1 map for the moment, and I'm going to move us over to talk about some digital equity resources that are available. So I'm not going to share any more data sets, but I am going to share resources that I think are going to be really useful to this group, and that we developed specifically with counties and regional councils of government and other community partners in mind. So right now I'm on our NCDIT webpage under digital equity resources. And we're going to talk about the asset inventory in a moment, but I'm going to scroll past it. And I want to share with you these county and regional digital inclusion plans. So we put these plans together just over a year ago. And we did it because we'd heard over and over again from our partners that they need to make the case for why digital equity matters, not just infrastructure, but why digital equity matters. But they didn't have the data. And, you know, depending on who their audience was, they might need to pull in different kinds of data, and they needed help with that. And so we partnered with Dr. Roberto Gallardo. He's an expert at Purdue University. He's one of the leaders in digital equity in the country, to develop profiles using census data. So this is American Community Survey data. It only goes so far, but it gives us a snapshot of what does North Carolina look like, what does each county look like with this data, and then what does each region look like as well. So you can see here we have the North Carolina Digital Inclusion Profile. It downloads as a PowerPoint. And then we have each regional council of government and then each county under those regional councils of government. So I'm going to open up one of these. I'm going to open up one PowerPoint so you can see what it looks like. I'm choosing, I think we have some folks from Mid-Carolina Regional Council of Government. So this is what it looks like. It's a PowerPoint. You can turn it into a PDF if you want. If you want to move slides around, this is why we put it in a PowerPoint, so you're able to move and edit as needed. It shows the methodology. It has kind of some basic population trends that might be interesting as you look at digital equity data, but it also shows data that is very digital equity focused. So for example, children by grade who don't have access to internet or computers. And you can see that in the Mid-Carolina region, for both middle school and high school, over 8% of kids at home don't have access to the internet or computers, right? So that could be something that is a key data point as you think about where do we need to focus in. And then it has some of this data by, I'm just going to kind of scroll through here, by different populations. So this is selected race, ethnicity with no computer. So you can see here that Black households and Native American households are worse off than white and Hispanic or Latino households in the Mid-Carolina region when it comes to not having a computer at home. So again, really interesting. We have this by county, by region. You can kind of go through and see, you know, I'm talking to a school system, or I'm talking to a group of economic developers, or I'm talking to a small business council. What might be the most interesting? I think this part is really interesting. So I'm just going to share it really quickly, is digital distress metrics. So this basically shows homes that rely on mobile devices only, or have no computer devices or no internet access, or rely on cell service. So it's kind of a metric that was put together to show households that might be in digital distress. So you can kind of look at this here as it compares to the US, North Carolina, and then the Mid-Carolina region. So one more screen sharing. So again, we mean this as a resource to folks in North Carolina. If you have questions as you go through it, we're always happy to answer those. And as new data gets released from the census, again, this all comes from American Community Surveys, which is census, then we will update these as well. But I don't think we're expecting a new data release for quite a while. Okay, so the final thing I'm going to share before I get to pass this off to my amazing partner, Erin, is the beginning workings of our asset inventory. So as part of the digital equity planning process, we needed to collect a whole lot of data on who was serving who in North Carolina. So what organizations, programs, initiatives are providing computers, digital skills, device lending programs, public Wi-Fi, et cetera, across the state. And this was one to kind of identify where are there programs and resources and assets, and then where are there gaps, and where are there gaps in specific services to specific priority or what we call covered populations. But also it was to connect people to resources. So we have a very initial list of these assets. Can you all see this? Are you seeing an Excel spreadsheet now?
Yep.
Awesome. So this is very, very basic. This shows you by county, by name, what is available, the specific covered populations that this asset serves, if we were able to collect that, the type of service. And then this just kind of shows, it does a count, because many organizations will provide more than one type of service. In this iteration, this is only so helpful. It can be sort of helpful for you to kind of look through your county. We can use Alamance County again and see that Parks and Recreation provides this public device and internet access. That's sort of helpful. It can be helpful to see if, like, are we missing something? But it's not super user-friendly in its current form, but it's going to be. So we're in the process. We've actually brought on a vendor as we speak, and we're going to be publishing a very user-friendly public database that will be updated monthly, that enables you to search assets really easily. So if you're an organization and you're trying to connect people to resources, and you have a client who speaks only Spanish. They live in Anson County, and they really need basic digital skills classes. You'll be able to look in this database and see, does there anything that exists in Anson County in Spanish that could support this person? If not, are there resources that are statewide, online, or in neighboring counties? So the idea is to make it very, very user friendly. So I'm just sharing this as almost like a preview of, like, we know we have all these data sources, we have 1,400 assets, over 900 organizations, but the really good stuff is coming. So I'm going to stop right there. I hope this wasn't kind of too overwhelming with where to start, but I hope this also shows you that a lot of work has been done, a lot's in progress, and that we are here to help you if you're trying to find information, data, and get started. And I now think I have the pleasure of passing this off to Erin Huggins, who's been just an extraordinary partner working on the digital equity plan. And she has some more localized data, which is really exciting, that she can share with you. So thanks.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Maggie. Yes, if we haven't shown you enough data at this point, just wait. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the state's digital equity plan, and specifically the digital equity survey that we launched last year. We did this as part of the planning process to help the state write a digital equity plan that aims to close the digital divide over the next 5 years. Let me see if I can share my screen. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. As part of this work, we collected survey data from community members across the state. We wanted to know about how they are accessing the internet, their access to devices, how they are getting technical support. And we also collected a lot of data around covered populations. So individuals that are 60 years and older, individuals for whom English is not their first language, veterans, racial and ethnic minorities, individuals with low levels of English or have low income levels, members of the LGBTQIA community, individuals with disabilities, and those who are or have previously been incarcerated. And we know that, we know that that is not all of the or individuals that we might consider high need in the state, but that is how they were defined. Oh, something just updated within the legislation. Let me see if I can get back to that map. Okay. So what we did is we took that survey data and we created a data dashboard so that you can go in and identify what specific needs are within your community. So very similar to the data that Maggie just shared. And we were able to collect 7,000 responses from every county in North Carolina. If you look at the map itself, you can see that the darker areas represent a higher response count. So in Wake County, 446 people took our survey. If you look at Jackson County, we had 95 people that took our survey. This is one of 3 iterations. So we're going to actually be collecting this data again in, I think, 2026 and 2028. I may be off by a year. But I wanted to walk you through just kind of how to explore this this data dashboard. So the first one, you can, again, just look at the state. You can see how many people took our survey. If you wanted to look at a specific county or a specific set of counties, you can click on, let's say we wanted to look at Avery County. I can see that that's probably not a good example. Only 3 people took it in Avery County. Let's look at Buncombe. So we had 219 people in Buncombe County that took our survey. But let's say I wanted to know a little bit more about the data. Let's say I wanted to know how many people that were considered in the aging population, which would be 60 or above. I can use this little slider here, and I can figure out how many people in that category took our survey. That was 130 people. Let's say I want to dig in even more, and I want to know how many people that took the survey did not speak
English as their first language. I can unclick or click on any of these buttons and it will filter the map accordingly. And you can do the same thing for any of these other things. So if we want to look at education level, race and ethnicity, and based on the filters you already have, it's going to only show you things that are available for like this county right now. So we're going to reset this and I'm going to show you some of the other data that we have available. All right. If I can get that little slider to go over. And we just actually had to change servers for this. So some of this doesn't look as crisp as it should, but we will be fixing this shortly. All right, so the first set of questions we're going to look at, we asked people about their services and their connections. So we want to look at how people are primarily connecting to the internet. We can see that overall 63% of people said that they are connecting only with home internet as their access point. We can also look at things like what are barriers to individuals' access to home internet. So for people that said, I do not have access to the internet at home, the internet is available but doesn't work, or the internet is not available was the top response. Other responses were the internet is too expensive. The internet is available, but it doesn't work well enough to meet my needs. And again, you can filter in almost any way you want. You can filter by a specific zip code, by a county. We can look specifically at veterans. And I think this is going to be really useful for individuals who are wanting to know a little bit more about specific areas or specific populations, especially as the digital inclusion funding comes out. This data can really help us better target individuals and areas that are most in need. You can look at things like mobile home or mobile phone access, if people have enough devices in their house, all of these types of things. Another set of questions we have looks at digital skills. And so this was a question we asked people like, how confident do you feel in all of these digital skills? So turning on a digital device, installing apps, you can see most people feel pretty confident in some of these basic things like word processing. An interesting thing that we noticed, and not terribly surprising, was when we dig down into kind of more advanced skills, such as keeping yourself safe online, we see that confidence levels go way down, not just for the general population, but for almost every population that we looked at. And so this is just, another data point that allows you to kind of dig into some of the specific demographics. We have another dashboard that will allow you to look at those specific demographics. And this, let's see, let's say we want to look at individuals and their level of schooling. So we can see 60% of survey takers had a college degree or higher. But let's say I also wanted to know how many of those had previously been incarcerated. I can click here and quickly see what that crossover is amongst our data. And we can see that not very many of them were like, I will say, data on individuals that have been or are currently incarcerated is very limited. So that's one of the populations we're really interested in learning more about and about their specific needs. But again, you can filter across multiple demographic data points here and see it very clearly visually. The other thing that we asked, and I'll try to make this really quick, was looking at the highest price that people felt they could afford for both home internet and mobile internet, as well as devices. And you can see for devices, generally, the general population felt about $500 was about as expensive as they could afford reasonably for a device. So that could be a tablet, that could be a computer. And again, you can use all of these filters to kind of dig down deeper. Same thing for internet and mobile devices. So generally speaking, most people felt about $50 a month was the most that they could afford for either mobile or home internet. So yeah, that is pretty much how you can access and use this data dashboard. I encourage you to play around with it. If you have any questions, just let us know. And now I am going to turn it over to Jess.
Thanks, Erin. Thanks, Maggie. I think we've answered most of the questions in the chat, but we will circle back later. Let's see. Kirsten, can you share the slides? Slide 12, please. Thank you. Excuse me. So we are going to talk a little bit about covered populations. And I know this is a newer term. It was defined by the National Telecommunications and Information Administration, also known as NTIA. And that was part of their Digital Equity Act, to identify specific populations that they wanted states to prioritize in their data collection in the state digital equity plans. And those are all listed here, as well as some two additional priority populations that the Office of Digital Equity and Literacy has identified. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about data for these populations and just acknowledge that sometimes it's easier to find, basic population data on some of these groups and others not so much, right? So the census data, the American Community Survey, finding data, population data for your area, your region, your county, your city on aging individuals, low income, rural areas, veterans, folks like that, that is directly asked in the census, right? And then others, we might have to get a little bit more creative with finding data, or some data just might not be accessible. So like we might have some data on populations within different prisons in our region, but reentry population, that gets really complicated, right? Because folks might be reentering your community from various other states or regions. Same with, English language learning, there's a lot of data. There can be a lot of data like that within your school system. So that would be a good place to look, but that's, school age and then might not necessarily be available for adults. With LGBTQ population, there are groups like the Williams Institute that collects data, and that's mostly statewide, so not specific for regions or counties, but that can give a helpful context. I will say that I know that the census is putting in a lot of funding right now to see if they're going to start asking questions about the LGBTQ population on the census. So that is probably coming soon-ish. I'm not sure on the timeline, but just wanted to sort of acknowledge what data is like easier, maybe harder to find, and also talk a little bit about, let's see, now I'm going to turn it, oh, sorry, I'm like also reading the chat at the same time. I shouldn't do that. Luckily, the statewide plan and the work that Erin and Maggie did and others really did sort of deep dives into various covered populations. So that's what's linked on these slides, is profiles to some qualitative data about different covered populations around their specific needs for digital inclusion. So I'm going to turn it over to Erin to share some of their qualitative findings, and also, as I'm sure you all know, keeping in mind that many covered population and identities like intersect. So turning over to Erin.
Thanks, Jess. So as Jess said, in the slides that we're going to share, you have links to all of the summaries that we have, kind of like a high-level 2-page summary of what we know about our covered populations based on all the data that we collected as part of the digital equity planning process. So a lot of this information is informed by the 23 listening sessions that we conducted last year, where we went around the state and we talked to groups of local community members, asking them about what their needs were, what things were available to them, and how we can help close gaps in digital equity and inclusion. So you can click on any of these and you'll be able to see kind of a high level summary of those. We've also included that high level summary in the slides, but I think for to save on time today, we're just going to share those. I can briefly describe some of the general needs and challenges that we've seen with some of these populations. So for example, with incarcerated individuals, having just digital skills in general is often challenging, especially when individuals have been in prison for a long time. Some of these folks that we talked to had never even seen a cell phone before, let alone knew how to create a PowerPoint presentation or things. And that was challenging, not only for just engaging in day-to-day activities, but also in trying to get a job. For aging individuals, we see that a lot of their challenges revolve around just being comfortable accessing technology and feeling safe online. So they really need a lot more support. Digital navigators seem to be really helpful in helping this population kind of navigate online. We can go to the next slide. For individuals with language barriers, a big issue is just being able to access information in their native language. And there's a big need for providing both language support and digital literacy training in one setting so that we're helping to develop both skills at the same time. For individuals with low levels of literacy, just having confidence to utilize technology and being able to navigate the internet are really, really big challenges. I'm gonna go to the next slide. Not surprising for individuals in rural areas, just the availability or the affordability of access to the internet is quite a challenge. For those of you that have ever been to like far western North Carolina or really rural eastern North Carolina, sometimes you get out there and even if you have all the money and ability to use the internet, there's no way to access it. That is one of the things that the state is going to be really highly prioritizing over the next several years. But also in a lot of areas where internet is available, the price is so high. I mean, I've talked with folks who have internet bills upwards of $250 a month for internet service that they describe as being really, really challenging and terrible. Low income households also really struggle with the cost of devices, repair services, and just internet in general. All right, we can go to the next page. Oh, can we go to the next slide? All right. For individuals with disabilities, accessibility is a really big issue. There are a lot of tools and resources that they need in order to be able to access the internet, things such as screen readers. For racial and ethnic minorities, one thing that came out of our listening sessions was beyond the difficulties in accessing the internet in rural areas, historical redlining has also been found to be a problem for digital equity as well. We kind of refer to that as digital redlining, where there are specific places in a lot of urban areas where service does not work. For the members of the LGBTQIA community, for the most part, they are very, very savvy when it comes to accessing the internet, generally are able to access devices and access repair services. But one of the main concerns that we have found is being able to feel safe in digital spaces. And there are definitely concerns about online safety among members of that group. And we can go to the next slide. And then finally, we talked with some youth. They were not a large part of our listening sessions, but the main conversation with our youth really revolved around access to devices and internet access at home and how inequitable, especially during the pandemic, we found that to be. There are kids that have to travel to parking lots or to McDonald's just to be able to do their homework. There are kids that are doing or writing papers on cellular phones and are expected to be able to turn that in or have to print out, their work and turn it in the next day. And so there have been a number of challenges that really, really became apparent during the pandemic that were also noted as part of our data collection. All right, we can go to the next slide. Right. And then finally, I've just added some additional resources. I'm not going to click on these, but these are kind of synthesis. This is kind of a synthesis of a lot of the findings from work that we did during the digital inclusion planning process. The first link is a literature review of digital inclusion plans that was put together by IEI. So it kind of gives you a high level overview of, what is happening in your community. Some of these are at the COG level. Most of them are at the county level. The next three are related to a digital literacy and equity literature review that our team put together. So the first link is going to be a concept map that kind of gives some high-level information about what we know from research about digital equity at this point in time. The next two are policy briefs that we put together that provide an overview of just best practices in digital literacy and equity, as well as a synthesis of findings from challenges that we've noted from covered populations. And I will say, a lot of what we found in the literature matches up with the data we collected both quantitatively and qualitatively during the digital equity planning process. And then finally, we have a list of policy briefs that provide a summary of our findings for each of the 23 listening sessions that we conducted last year. So if you're really, really interested in digging more into this data, this is all available to you. And I am now going to turn it back over to Jess.
Hello again. So now we are going to, with just a few more minutes that we have, we're going to talk a little bit more about national data. So next slide. I just wanted to quickly go over the FCC broadband map. And as Maggie said, we have really great state data on this, but I sometimes feel like this can be helpful for folks. So this is kind of a wordy graphic, but I just wanted to go over what the broadband maps are because they've come a long way in the last few years. So the broadband map has two layers. One is called the fabric location, and that is basically the buildings, the infrastructure where broadband can potentially be. That's updated twice a year. And then on top of that is the broadband availability. And that's going to be, what is available in down to the address. So I put the link in the chat. I find that this is really helpful. Oh, and I'm sorry, that's also updated throughout the year. And both of these are updated based on challenges. So I find this to sometimes be helpful when I'm working with constituents who want that affirmation, right? That they don't have internet, or maybe that their internet's really slow. I've looked at this map with folks. You can enter in a specific address if folks feel comfortable with that. And then it takes you down to their specific house and it shows you exactly what is there. I don't think we have time to necessarily look at the map, but the link is helpful. Put in an address and you can see. You can also click on that home screen. You can click on location and just know that you have to zoom in really, really close to get to that specific point data. But it's helpful for folks, to show like, look, you just have access to satellite and these are the speeds. And again, the challenge process, I'm going to turn that over for Maggie just to talk a little bit quickly about the challenge process, but it's great that the FCC, we can challenge both the fabric and the broadband availability so that they can update those and make them more accurate.
Yeah, so basically what this has enabled us to do. So the survey I shared earlier, our broadband survey, allowed us to look at what the FCC had produced and be able to challenge. And we put together 40,000 challenges. This was a year ago. This was in December 2022. So right over the holidays, 40,000 challenges done in about a month. And what that meant for North Carolina is we've got the most challenges of any other state. And then our allocation for broadband infrastructure funds from the BEAD funding was increased by about 500 million. So about $500 million more money than North Carolina got because of our ability to challenge. And what that means is that we believe by 2030, all households and businesses that are currently unserved or underserved will have high-speed internet. So this is major, 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 and it all comes back to the work that our division has done on that broadband survey to do this challenge process. That's all I got for you,
Maggie,
Jess.
real quick, we have a question in the chat about FCC data and if that's feeding into our data aggregated to the hex bins on the site.
I don't know the answer to that, but I'm currently in a Teams message with our data lead, so I might be able to get it in real time. So let me try to see if I can get that for you.
Thank you. And also I learned yesterday from Emily Ganji, an amazing person on the state team, that the broadband survey, if you're supporting folks and filling that out, if they put their contact information in there, and if the speed or availability is different than what the FCC map is, that spurs the broadband office to make a challenge automatically, which is incredible. So that's only if they enter in their contact information, because the FCC does need certain data to make that, to accept those challenges. But just know that, the broadband survey is also continually adding to that challenge process. So we're continually getting better and better data for North Carolina.
Awesome.
And I think we're gonna pass it over to Kylie.
Yep, sounds good. I'm going to wrap us up with just a few more data sets. Again, we'll send this out. But the best way to learn about what's happening nationally, again, we always have to brag on North Carolina. We have the best of kind of everything, but we also really learn from everyone around the country. I'm going to put the NDIA listserv. So in order to join that, you need to be an affiliate. That is a free process. You could always be an affiliate plus. I'm sure many of you are on here. The listserv is wonderful. It's very overwhelming for those that are on. I have mine go directly to an email. And then when I'm just bored throughout the week, I go through and scroll. But I just wanted to highlight too, that actually our team found out the listserv and has heard, I've learned so much about what's happening nationally with digital inclusion projects. So you might have been in our webinar last year, but I always have to highlight the National Skills Coalition Closing the Digital Divide report. This is incredible. It talks about the economic impact of increasing digital skills. It has really practical knowledge in there, especially if you're talking to town councils or county managers about the importance of digital inclusion being an economic issue. So just a few statistics from this report. It's really lengthy. They also have a skinny report that you could read in just a few minutes. But workers that qualify for jobs that even require one digital skill can earn an average of 23% more than jobs that have no digital skills. And the report is amazing. There's actually a North Carolina profile in there as well. So this translates to, on average, $8,000 more per worker when you add a digital skill in North Carolina. This report is all centered around a 2021 survey that scanned 1.5 million job ads in North Carolina, and 91% of those required a definitely or likely definitely digital skill. So again, it shows the importance of how we need to increase digital skills and help workers transition, upskill in order to increase their economic status. And then last but not least, they also have applying a racial equity lens to digital literacy. So the National Skills Coalition has a lot of resources on their website. But again, we really, really love these two reports, and we'll put them in the links as well. And last but not least, I just wanted to quickly mention, you might have seen this in our connected newsletter, but the Digital Advancement Mooney Index, this is for our cities in North Carolina, over 65,000 in population. So that's 14 cities. You can go on there and look at incredible data. They just added some new data from 2021, I believe. It'd been going off of 2019 before that. So highly recommend going and looking at that if these are one of your cities mentioned that you'll see right on there. Real quickly, before we go on to a few minutes of questions, I just wanted to end saying that we wanted to send a save the date to everyone here. We will be focusing on celebrating our Western digital inclusion plans that have been funded by the Dogwood Health Trust. This will be on June 4th at Blue Ridge Community College over in Flat Rock, but we also want to make a statewide invitation to digital inclusion partners, including folks on this call. So don't worry, we will send out more information through our connected newsletter. We will have registration information. It's a free event opening in early April about how you can come and join us. We're so excited that this will be one of our first statewide gatherings on digital inclusion. As you all might know, IEI is a convening organization, and so we really appreciate our partners helping us put this event together in June and hope it's the first of many. So we want to take the last 5 minutes to do some questions. I know most of them have been answered in the chat. I want to get us started off with Maggie. There's been a number of suggestions and ideas about accessibility. What is the best way to ask your office or to ask you about accessibility ideas or suggestions?
Send them my way. This is something that obviously is a tenet of digital inclusion. I think generally the field has been maybe slower than it needs to be to focus on accessibility of online content, both in terms of language access as well as accessibility for people with disabilities. And so we're all trying to play catch up. And so we need to rely on experts in the field, people who've seen things that work really well that say, I saw someone say they want to make something more accessible for their community. How can we work with you to make it more accessible so you don't have to do the extra work? So I'll put my email in the chat. I know that you'll send it out. This is something that I'm working really closely, since we're in the Department of Information Technology. I'm working really closely with kind of high level leadership on this. And so flag it for us. We want to know, we want to do better.
Absolutely. And I know folks have been answering questions in the chat, but I want to let anyone, if you want to unmute yourself and ask a more detailed question, or if you didn't get your question fully answered or have something to follow up on, we'd love to take your questions right now. All righty, last call. I'm looking at the chat, but feel free to unmute yourself as well.
This has been so amazing. So much data here. I'm just a bit overwhelmed with all of the information that we received. Is there a way to create sort of a home where we can find links to all of these things? So short of reaching out to one of you, which you all have been so gracious when I've done that in the past, where we can kind of, okay, this is the data hub for all things digital equity.
I am so excited for Jess to answer that question for you, because we have an answer.
Great question, Laura, from librarian to librarian. We are at IEI right now are working with our comms team to create what we're sort of calling a resource hub, or what I'm sort of calling in the back end a LibGuide, if you will, of, basically all things digital equity and inclusion. Right now it's in the beginning stages, but there's definitely a section that's going to be all about data. And so it'll have links, it'll have like a brief description of where to go. And Kirsten, our amazing comms person who is on the call, is helping us design that right now. So I'm hoping that the first, phase of that resource hub will be coming out in the next couple of months. But yes, data will be on there. We'll be updating it with our great team of interns. It was definitely many thanks to our COG leaders who asked specifically for that, wanted sort of more of a constant access to this sort of information. So yeah, thanks for that. And we heard them and we're working on it. So we will definitely share that out.
Yes. And for now, we have the slides. All the links, we'll make sure it's updated, will be in that slides. You can look in the slide section or the notes section, and you'll see the links of everything mentioned today, along with the header. We know there was, at least 20 things to look at. And we're really excited to have this website in the future to make it really easy for you to constantly go back to, bookmark it, have it be your main page. Mine is people.com right now, so it'd actually probably be more educational for me to have a work thing up there. But thank you all so much for joining today. Maggie, Jess, and Erin, that was incredible. We know an information data deep dive for sure. but that you all are available to answer more questions and specific questions. And y'all will be getting a follow-up email very shortly. We'll have a survey. Please let us know how we can make these webinars better for you and what you're working on and suggestions for topics in the future. We'll have a link to the slides. Again, those slides have all the links mentioned today. And Maggie and Erin's contact information as well. Our recording will be up on our website. So if you have someone on your team that really needs to go back and watch this, please do. And in the meantime, I think we have some incredible accessibility recommendations for all of the incredible resources mentioned so far. And it seems like Maggie's team, Erin's team, and of course our team at Band and C are really working on it, but we really do take your suggestions to heart. So thank you all so much again for your thoughtful questions and suggestions today. Thank you so much for joining us. Make sure if you're not, again, part of the NDI listserv or the Band and C Connected newsletter, we'll send out all the stuff from Maggie's office. We work with Erin every single week. And so it's a great way to keep abreast of what's happening with all of us. Thank you all so much for joining us. And I hope you have a wonderful day.